What's up, Scrappy peeps? It's Adele from Inkie Quill, and today I'm doing a scrappy, trying to use up my scrap stash paper box here kind of layout. Does anyone else have a box like this that just has multiplying pieces of pattern paper that I go through this box and then a month later it's overflowing, and it got to the point, I have been diving into it a bit lately, but it got to the point where I couldn't quite close it properly, and I just store it in an old kit subscription pizza box. But I have two ways that I store my scrap paper in my room. This is for all of the bigger bits, so I would say that this is for all of the pieces that are maybe like 9 by 12 or bigger, that don't quite fit in my other drawer system. For all of the smaller papers, I keep them in a little set of 4 drawers that is directly under my tabletop, which it never used to be. I used to keep my stash of paper over on a shelf on the other side of the room, and I found that I wasn't using it as much. So by having it right under my desktop, I reach for it more often. But that's where I keep all my little bits, because I find that if I have my big bits with my little bits, then it all just gets lost and the little bits don't get used at all. How do you store your scrap paper? I'd be interested to know what people's tips and tricks are. So while I've been gas bagging about paper, because I love paper, let's face it, I am definitely a paper nerd. Paper nerds unite. I am doing a really, really basic mixed media background, and I dirtied a stencil, so I'm slapping that into my Use It Up journal, which has some stuck together pages. If you're new to my channel, or if you haven't watched one of my mixed media videos before, I have this Use It Up journal, which I do process videos on my second channel, Let's Get Inky, which is more arty and journally. I have this little journal, and it has been one of the best things that I started in my craft room, because it gives me art journal backgrounds for the cleanup of for half the cleanup, I guess you could say, because I don't dirty things as often, and it's also just really fun to just slap some paint in a book. I'm a big believer in, if you have a blank page or a blank canvas, it's a lot more intimidating than if you've already got a page that's got some paint on it. Arty tangent, back on track with the layout. I used a stencil. I have a feeling that arrowy, chevron-y one could be an old Kaiser Craft one, possibly. I've had it for a very long time in my stash, and it's a 12 by 12 stencil, and I will be honest, I often forget about my 12 by 12 stencils. They are stored in a drawer, and it's the same as the paper. If it's stored out of sight, it's out of mind for me. Does anyone have any tips on how you store your big stencils? All of the rest of my stencils are in a binder, which I use almost every time I either scrapbook or do art journaling, but the 12 by 12s are a bit too big. So I use that, and then a smaller Tim Holtz one with some white texture paste and a spatula to put that through. And I know I use a lot of adhesive. I've talked about it lots and lots of times. I live in Australia, where it is either very, very hot. For example, the week that I'm recording this voiceover, we had 42 degrees, which is a little bit steamy, that's Celsius, not Fahrenheit. And then it also gets very cold and damp in the house that I live in, and we can't really do anything about it because it's a rental. So I do use a lot of adhesive, because otherwise my bits and pieces fall off in my albums, as I have seen with my first albums. So that's why. I am determined to use these tiny, tiny little bits. I can't go past, I know it's not a polka dot, but this paper, I think could be a cocoa vanilla one, and it reads like a polka dot. It's got these tiny little crosses on it, and I just can't get enough of any polka dots. That drawer that you just saw on the left there is where I store all of my smaller bits and pieces, and I have 4 drawers, a neutral one, pinks and reds, blues and purples, and then green, yellow and orange all together. This back piece that I'm sticking on is actually a piece of just basil marshmallow cardstock, and I had created a background for a Patreon video quite a while ago, and I had some extra, I think I had extra modelling paste on my spatula, so instead of putting it back into my container, I just used the stencil that I was using and put some on some cardstock. And that's another great way to, instead, if you don't have a use it up journal, just grab some cardstock next time you're using a stencil and pop some mixed media-y goodness on a piece of cardstock so that it's ready for next time, and you don't have to go to the fuss of starting to create a background if it's already started for you. I am using glue, wet glue, to stick the big photo mat onto my background because I have texture paste in the background and it's very, very lumpy and bumpy, and my double-sided tape or ATG adhesive tape thing would definitely not hold it against that texture paste. It needed some wet glue. I must have run out of my normal glue, which is just Scotch tacky glue at this point, because I wouldn't usually use glossy accents, which is the glue that I'm using. The trouble with glossy accents is that it is just that. It's very glossy, and if you're like me and are a little heavy-handed with your glue, or it likes to ooze out from behind what you're sticking on, you will get a glossy patch. So this isn't a glue that I would recommend using unless you were very careful and it wasn't going to ooze out. I am giving these thickers, they're an old cork thicker from my stash, and the adhesive on them is just shocking. So I'm gluing those down just to make sure that they stay stuck, because there's nothing that frustrates me more, and this has happened with my 2013 album. There's a couple of pages that I've written titles, and somehow maybe in moving house a couple of times, some of the letters have fallen off, but they've also fallen out of the plastic page protector, and I don't have those alphabets anymore, and so now the words don't read what they're meant to read, which is, it's a little bit frustrating. I wanted to add some flowers because even though this is a layout of my little boy, I like flowers, and I'm more than happy to use them on a boy page. And so I grabbed some Cocoa Vanilla, which in my opinion do my favourite florals out of all the scrapbook companies. And I did like that in this collection there were quite a few bluish ones, and I thought it went well with this page. I decided to do the smaller photo and the larger photo for this one. I was tossing up that bottom photo. He's not looking at the camera, but I really wanted to capture his little curls because, his curls are long gone now. Can you believe it, peeps? If you've been here for a few years, he's turning 3 in about a week and a half. How is he 3 years old already? These photos are old. He would have probably been about 18 months at this point, and he still had all of his little baby hair. But alas, the summers, like I said, the summers that we have in Australia are just boiling hot, and his curls were just getting matted. He hated having them brushed, and they were getting in his eyes. And he's a bit of a rambunctious, rough and tumble type of child, and so they were stopping him from getting into all of the fun shenanigans and the dirt and the mud that he likes to jump in. So we did have to give him a bit of a haircut, but I did keep some of his original curls, and I'm very curious to see what Violet's hair will be like, if it will be as curly as this. My hair, Archie's hair is exactly like mine was when I was little, except mine was Ranger, otherwise known as ginger or redhead, and he's very, very blonde. So while I've been yakking on about hair, I added a few little clear stickers, and clear stickers are something that I sometimes find a bit challenging, I think, because if I'm layering them on a background, the background paper needs to be quite neutral, quite plain and simple. And a lot of the papers that I use are busy florals. Time for some Hardy Shine. Shake, 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 shake Hardy Shine, shake Hardy Shine. Adding some Hardy Shine in a moment. Apparently I wanted to add more things, stick on all the things. I'm trying to use up some of these little puffy and enamel sticker sheets that I have in my stash, because I seem to have a habit of opening up new packets of enamel dots and enamel shapes and then forgetting them and opening up a new one. And I kind of just felt like this page needed an extra kick of a colour that wasn't blue. And so I added the tiny little hit of it's kind of a peachy coral colour. It ties in with the little love heart that's on the photo, and then also just with the tones that are in that photo in the bottom right hand corner there. So it's an almost monochromatic page, but I just felt like it needed a little bit of colour just to warm it up a bit, because the black and white photo, it's quite a cool black and white photo, because you can play with the tint a little bit and change the variation of how black and white a photo is. I hope that made sense. Then I wanted to do journaling, but of course there's text in the background of the paper, and I felt a bit silly writing text on top of text. I thought it would be a bit hard to see, so I just wrote it on some white cardstock that I had lying around, and I'm just sticking that down the bottom here, just nice and subtle. Doesn't stand out too much, but it gets my journaling on there. And this page is all done. More Hardy Shine. Can't go wrong with more Hardy Shine, of course. But this page is all done. So thanks for tuning in today, peeps. Don't forget to head over to my second channel if you're interested in arty stuff. It's called Let's Get Inky. Or if you're interested in longer videos, more videos, monthly printable content, you can check out my Patreon in the comments below, in the description below. And I'll see you in the next video, guys. Bye!